The ocean world of avarice never slept. The great sea stretched as far as eyes could see. Glowing under two silver moons, waves crashed against black stone cliffs, and the night was filled with strange music of water and wind. The ocean was alive, and it was dangerous. On this night, the air was heavy with fear. From the floating palace above the waters, voices of panic rose. Torches lit the sky. Shadows rushed across the bridges that connected the shining towers. Alien guards shouted, their armor bright with green fire. The princess had fallen, her long silk gown now tangled in the deadly tide. She had slipped from the balcony during the grand celebration, and no one had been fast enough to catch her. The sea below was not safe. It was no ordinary water. It was alive with glowing creatures, sharp coral, and deadly currents that pulled even the strongest warriors to the deep. The aliens froze on the bridges. None dared to leap. Their people feared the ocean more than they feared war. For centuries, they had watched it swallow ships and soldiers. The guards looked at each other, their hands shaking. They were loyal, but they were afraid. The princess screamed once before the waves pulled her down. Her crown slipped from her head and vanished under the glowing tide. Panic grew louder. Priests shouted prayers. Soldiers shouted orders. The king's voice thundered in anger and fear, but no one moved. And then, in the shadows near the dock, a human stepped forward. His name was Daniel. He was not a prince, not a soldier, not even a man of their world. He was only a traveler, stranded here when his ship broke during a storm. For weeks he had lived quietly among them, fixing small machines and helping traders. They saw him as weak, fragile, and simple. But tonight he walked to the edge of the dock, his eyes fixed on the drowning princess. The alien shouted at him, "Stay back. You will die." Another cried, "The sea will eat you alive." But Daniel did not stop. His heart pounded, his chest burned with fear, but he had no time to think. He saw her sinking deeper, her pale hands reaching toward the surface. The glow of the ocean lit her face like a fading star. His mind screamed that he was only human, too small for this alien world, too weak for its dangers. But another voice inside him spoke louder. "If I do nothing, she will die." He threw off his jacket, he took one deep breath, and he jumped. The water hit him like a wall. It was colder than ice and heavier than stone. The current dragged him down, pulling at his arms and legs. He opened his eyes, and at once he saw the nightmare below. Creatures with long electric tails swam in circles. Their bodies glowed blue and red. Their eyes burned like fire. Coral towers rose like knives from the dark, sharp enough to cut through bone. The princess was below him, sinking fast. Her gown floated around her like wings of silk. Her eyes were closed, and her lips were pale. Daniel pushed his arms against the water, kicking hard. The ocean tried to pull him away, but he kept going. Every movement was pain. Every second was a battle. Above, the aliens screamed from the bridge. Their voices echoed over the waves. Some covered their eyes, sure that both the human and their princess were lost. No one had ever entered the sea and returned alive, but still the human fought. His lungs burned, his body screamed for air, but he pushed deeper, reaching out through the dark. At last, his fingers touched her hand. He grabbed it and pulled her close, wrapping one arm around her waist. She was heavy in the water, and the tide fought to tear her away. But Daniel held on. The ocean roared in his ears, his strength faded. The creatures circled closer, sparks of light flashing in the water. He kicked hard, pushing upward, dragging the princess with him. His chest felt like it would explode, his vision blurred. The surface was far, too far. But then, a strange calm came over him. He remembered the stars above the alien world. The promise he made to himself when his ship broke. He had said, "I will not die forgotten. I will not die doing nothing." And now those words gave him fire. With the last of his strength, he kicked again. His arms ached, his chest burned, but slowly, the surface came closer. The glow of the moons grew brighter. The sound of voices returned. Then at last, his head broke the water. He gasped, dragging in air like it was gold. In his arms, the princess coughed weakly, her eyes opening just a little. The guards fell silent. Hundreds of alien eyes stared at the human holding their royal daughter. No one spoke. No one believed it was possible. But here he was shaking, gasping, alive, with the princess safe in his arms. And in that moment, the ocean world of avarice changed forever. The ocean clung to Daniel like chains. Every movement was a fight, his muscles screamed, but he held the princess close against his chest. Her body was cold, her eyes barely open, her lips trembled with life and death. He knew if he let go for even 1 second, the sea would take her forever. Around them, the water was alive. Strange creatures moved in circles, their bodies glowing in the dark like living lanterns. Their tails sparked with light, flashing like lightning in the sea. One brushed close to Daniel's arm, and pain shot through his body like fire. He gritted his teeth, refusing to scream. If he lost focus now, they would both be gone. The waves above were violent. Every time he tried to rise, the current dragged him sideways, pulling him deeper toward the sharp coral towers. He kicked harder, twisting his body, forcing himself away. The princess's gown caught against the jagged rocks. The silk tore, threads glowing faintly as they drifted away. Daniel pulled harder, refusing to let the coral cut her, refusing to lose her to the sea. On the bridges high above, the aliens leaned over. Their voices echoed, some shouted prayers. Others screamed for soldiers to throw ropes. But no one moved. They could not believe what they were seeing, a fragile human wrestling with the nightmare ocean, carrying their royal bloodline in his arms. Daniel's vision blurred. Salt burned his eyes, his chest begged for air, but he held it in. He forced himself upward, kicking against the angry tide. The princess stirred weakly, her hand brushing his shoulder. For a moment, he felt her trust, and that was enough to give him strength. The glowing creatures came again, faster this time. Their tails crackled with energy. One darted toward Daniel, its teeth sharp like knives. Instinct took over. Daniel swung his free arm, punching through the water. His fist struck the creature's side, and a burst of light exploded around him. The pain was worse than fire, but the beast darted away, leaving a trail of sparks. The princess's eyes opened wider. She saw what no alien had ever seen before, a human fighting the sea itself. His face twisted with pain, but he did not stop. His arms held her like treasure, unshakable and firm. The surface felt farther away with every kick. The ocean was a monster trying to drag him down. His body wanted to surrender, to give in, to rest. But then he remembered her scream, the sound that had cut through the night. He remembered the fear in her eyes when she fell. That memory burned brighter than the pain. Not today, he whispered into the water, though no sound escaped his lips. With the last of his strength, he surged upward. His arms fought like iron. His legs kicked like a machine. The water fought back, but he refused to give in. Inch by inch, he rose. His head ached, his chest tore with fire. His vision turned dark at the edges. At last, his hand broke the surface, then his head, then the princess's pale face. Gasps erupted from the palace bridges. The aliens screamed in shock and relief. Some cried out her name. Others shouted in disbelief. Daniel dragged himself onto a sharp rock near the dock, the princess still in his arms. His lungs exploded with air, every breath a desperate fire. He laid her gently on the rock, pressing her chest, whispering for her to breathe. The ocean roared behind them, waves crashing like angry drums. The glowing creatures circled once more, but they did not strike. They only watched, their lights flickering like strange stars in the deep. The princess coughed, her body shook, and then water spilled from her lips. Her chest rose, weak but alive. Her eyes opened, and she looked at him. Her voice was soft, almost lost to the waves. You were not one of us, yet you saved me. Daniel could not answer. His body trembled with exhaustion. Every muscle felt torn, but when he looked in her eyes, he saw something powerful, not just gratitude, but something deeper, a spark of connection. Above, guards scrambled down with ropes and poles, shouting. The king himself leaned forward from the highest balcony, his face twisted between fear and wonder. For the first time in centuries, the ocean had been defied, and it was not by a soldier, not by an alien prince, but by a human. Daniel gripped the rock, water dripping from his hair. His breath came in ragged bursts. He looked at the princess, then at the furious sea behind them. And in that moment, he understood something. The ocean had tried to claim her, but fate had chosen him instead. Silence fell across the floating city. For a long moment, no one spoke. The waves crashed against the palace docks. The glowing sea hissed and rumbled, but the voices of the crowd were gone. Every alien eye was fixed on the human who now sat upon the rock, the princess alive in his arms. Daniel's chest heaved. His skin burned with cuts, his arms shook with exhaustion. Yet his hold on her was steady. He would not let her slip back into the ocean. Not now, not ever. The princess coughed again, her body weak, but her breath growing stronger. Drops of water ran from her lips. Her hand, pale and trembling, rested on Daniel's chest. She blinked, looking up at him with eyes filled not only with gratitude, but with wonder. Whispers spread through the crowd. At first, soft and uncertain, but soon louder. Some cried that it was a miracle. Others said it was madness. Guards shifted uneasily, torn between duty and disbelief. No alien had ever entered the sea and lived to tell. And yet this human, this fragile outsider, had defied it. From the highest balcony, the alien king leaned forward. His golden crown gleamed under the twin moons. His face was carved with stone-like pride, but even he could not hide his shock. His daughter was alive, saved not by his soldiers, not by his priests, but by a human traveler who should have drowned. "Impossible," muttered one noble beside him. "He cannot be real. This is a trick," another hissed. "The ocean must have chosen him. Why else would it spare a human?" Their voices clashed, mixing fear with envy. The guards finally reached the dock. Ropes were thrown, hands stretched out, but none dared touch Daniel at first. He stared back at them, his chest still burning, his eyes sharp like steel. He did not look like prey. He looked like someone who had fought death and returned. At last, two guards helped lift the princess from his arms. She gasped as they placed her on a shining cloth. The healers rushed forward, pressing crystals to her chest, chanting words that glowed with light. The crowd bowed low, their heads pressed to the ground, relieved to see their princess alive. But the princess did not look at them. Her gaze stayed fixed on Daniel. Her lips moved softly, and though her voice was weak, the words reached him clearly. "You are not ordinary. You are chosen." Daniel blinked. The words struck deep, heavier than the waves themselves. Chosen? By what? By her. By fate. By the very ocean that tried to kill them. He had no answer, only the pounding of his heart. The crowd erupted in voices. Some cheered, some cursed, some demanded that the human be rewarded. Others hissed that he should be punished. "He touched the royal bloodline," cried one noble in rage. "He dared to lay his hands upon the princess." Another shouted back, "He saved her life when no one else would." The arguments rose like thunder. The king raised his hand, and the city fell silent again. His eyes bore down on Daniel, measuring him as though weighing his very soul. The silence stretched long, too long, and Daniel felt the weight of thousands of alien stares pressing down upon him. The princess stirred once more. Her voice, though weak, rang out with command. "Father, he saved me." Her hand lifted slightly, pointing to Daniel. "Without him, I would be lost to the sea. You must honor him." Gasps rippled through the nobles. The princess herself had spoken for him. Her words carried weight no soldier, no priest, no king could ignore. The king's eyes narrowed. He did not speak at once. His silence was more dangerous than anger. He studied the human, this outsider who had defied the ocean, his face unreadable, but his voice, when it came, was deep and sharp. "Bring him to the palace," the king commanded. The guards froze, uncertain. One of them whispered, "My king, he is only a human." But the king's glare silenced him. The order was not to be questioned. The crowd roared in shock. Some clapped their hands, others cursed. A path opened across the dock as the guards moved to surround Daniel, not with weapons drawn, but with caution, as though they were escorting not a prisoner, but something far more dangerous. Daniel rose slowly, his body weak, but his spirit unbroken. He stood taller than before, his eyes scanning the glowing city. He had expected nothing. No reward, no thanks. But now he was being taken to the heart of their power. The princess, before being carried away by healers, looked at him once more, her lips curved in the faintest smile. Her whisper reached only his ears. "This is only the beginning." And with those words, Daniel felt a chill that was not from the ocean. The path ahead was dark, uncertain, and filled with eyes that hated him. But something inside told him that tonight was not an ending. It was the first step of something far greater. The floating palace of avarice rose above the ocean like a crown of fire. Its towers glowed with blue light, and bridges stretched between them like silver threads. Beneath, the black sea roared, a reminder that danger was never far. Tonight, however, the palace was not filled with song or laughter, but with whispers of fear and awe. Daniel walked through the gates with guards at his side. His clothes were torn, his skin marked with cuts from the ocean, his hair dripped with salt water. Yet he walked with steady steps, his heart beat fast, but he would not show weakness. Thousands of eyes followed him, servants, nobles, warriors, all staring at the human who had done the impossible. The crowd murmured as he passed. Some bowed slightly, curious and respectful. Others spat on the ground, their faces twisted in anger. He touched her, one hissed. A stranger laid hands on the princess. Another whispered back, "He saved her, do not forget that." But envy burned as bright as gratitude. The guards led him across a great bridge of crystal that shone like moonlight. Below, the ocean stretched endless and dark. Daniel glanced once at the waves, and for a moment he thought he saw glowing eyes watching him from the deep. He quickly looked away. At the center of the palace stood the grand hall. Its doors were carved from a single piece of black stone, covered with runes that pulsed with light. As they opened, Daniel felt a rush of cold air, heavy with incense and power. The hall inside was vast, lit by floating orbs that drifted like stars. The ceiling arched high above, painted with images of battles, gods, and seas of fire. At the far end sat the alien king. His throne was carved from living crystal, tall and sharp like a mountain. His crown burned with golden flames, his eyes, bright and hard, locked onto Daniel the moment he stepped inside. Around him stood the nobles of the court, their robes shining with jewels, their faces masks of suspicion. The guard stopped, and Daniel was pushed forward, alone before the throne. He stood, his chest still raw from the sea, his hands trembling, but his eyes never lowered. He would not bow. The hall whispered again. "He does not kneel," someone gasped. "Does he not know who stands before him?" Another sneered. "He is human. He knows nothing of respect." But others said, "Perhaps he kneels to no one but his own kind." The arguments rippled like waves through the hall. The king raised his hand, and silence fell. His voice was deep, rolling like thunder. "You are the one who dared the sea," he said, his words cut through the air, cold and sharp. "You pulled my daughter from its jaws. You live, though no other has. Tell me, human, why?" Daniel swallowed. His throat was dry. He thought of the princess, of her pale face sinking into the water, of the fear in her eyes. His answer came simple and true, because she was drowning and no one else moved. Gasps echoed through the hall. Nobles shifted, some frowning, others whispering with awe. The king's eyes narrowed. "You risked your life for one not of your kind. Why?" Daniel's voice was steady now, his fear gone. "Because life is life," she cried for help, "and I could not stand and watch. I am human. That is enough." The hall was silent. The words, simple as they were, struck deep. The nobles, so proud and careful, had never spoken of life in such plain truth. Even the king leaned back slightly, his face unreadable. Then, before the king could answer, a voice rose. It was the princess, carried into the hall on a crystal bed by healers. Her skin was still pale, but her eyes burned bright. She pointed to Daniel, her voice clear. "Father, he speaks true. He saved me when no one else dared. His courage is greater than fear. You must honor him." The hall trembled with gasps. Nobles bowed their heads. Some looked furious, others amazed. The princess's words were law. Her voice could not be ignored. The king stared long at his daughter, then at Daniel, his face hard as stone, but his voice shook the hall like a storm. Then he shall be tested. The crowd roared. Some cheered. Others cried out. A test was the way of their people. No outsider could be trusted without trial. Some whispered that the human would die. Others feared he might succeed. The princess's eyes flickered with worry. She whispered as healers carried her away, her words only for Daniel. Be careful. They will not test your strength alone. They will test your soul. Daniel stood in the center of the hall, guards moving closer. The nobles whispered like a rising storm. The king's command echoed in his ears. The test was coming. It would decide his fate. The sky above Avarice burned red with dawn. The ocean hissed and rolled beneath the floating palace, and the people gathered in the arena of trials. It was no ordinary arena. It was a circle of crystal and stone, suspended above the Black Sea. Its floor was carved with glowing runes, and its walls rose like cliffs. Thousands of aliens filled the seats, their voices rising like thunder. They had come to see the human face the test. Daniel stood at the center. His clothes had been replaced with simple armor, light but strong. His hands were bare, his body still aching from the ocean, yet his spirit stood unbroken. He looked around him, hearing the roar of the crowd, but his eyes searched for only one face. He found her, the princess, seated high above beside the king, her body weak but alive, her gaze locked on him with worry and hope. The king rose, his crown glowed like fire. His voice rolled over the crowd. This human has entered the sea and returned. He has touched the royal bloodline. He has spoken words of life and courage. But words are wind, deeds are stone. Let us see if he is worthy of honor or if he is nothing but chance. The nobles cheered. Some laughed cruelly. He will fail. He is flesh too soft for trial. They muttered. Others whispered. If he succeeds, then perhaps he is more than flesh. Daniel stood tall. His heart pounded, but he forced his breath to steady. He had faced death once in the ocean. He would face it again here. The floor of the arena shook. The runes burned brighter, and with a sound like breaking glass. The ground split. From the cracks rose pillars of stone, twisting into jagged shapes. Between them, shadows moved. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He felt the air grow colder. From the shadows came the trial beasts, creatures of the deep, pulled from the ocean and bound by magic. Their bodies glowed faintly, their eyes red like fire, their teeth long, their tails sharp like blades. The crowd screamed in delight. This was no simple test. It was death itself. The gates closed behind him. He was alone, unarmed, surrounded. Daniel's chest tightened. Fear pressed at his mind, but he refused to let it rule him. He remembered the princess's words. They will not test your strength alone. They will test your soul. The first beast lunged, its tail cracked like lightning. Daniel rolled aside, his armor scraping against stone. The creature struck the pillar instead, shattering crystal into shards. Daniel grabbed one shard. Sharp as a knife, his hand bled, but now he had a weapon. The crowd gasped. Some laughed. Others leaned forward. He fights with broken stone. They whispered. The king's eyes narrowed, watching closely. The beast charged again. Daniel held his ground. At the last moment, he sidestepped and drove the shard into its side. A burst of light exploded. The creature shrieked, and its body fell into the cracks. The crowd erupted in shouts, half cheered, half cursed. But more beasts came, two this time, circling him like wolves. Daniel backed against a pillar, breathing hard. His body burned, but his mind stayed sharp. He could not win with strength. He had to outthink them. He studied the runes glowing under his feet. They pulsed when the creatures moved closer. He stepped back onto one, and suddenly the rune lit brighter. The beast snarled. Hesitating, Daniel's eyes widened. The runes were not decoration. They were weapons. He shouted, stamping his foot on the rune. Energy burst upward like a flash of lightning. Striking one of the beasts, it screamed, twisting, and fell into the cracks. The crowd roared in shock. Nobles whispered furiously. He learns too fast. One hissed. The last beast lunged. Daniel rolled. cutting its tail with the shard. Sparks flew. It turned, furious, charging with all its weight. Daniel leapt aside, leading it across the runes. At the perfect moment, he struck the ground with both hands. The rune exploded, fire and light wrapping the beast. Its body shattered into smoke. The arena fell silent. Daniel stood alone in the center, his chest heaving, the shard of crystal still in his bleeding hand. The runes dimmed, the floor shook once more, and then silence. The king rose slowly, his face unreadable. The nobles shouted over each other, some in outrage, others in awe, but the princess smiled faintly. Her hand pressed her chest, her eyes glimmered with pride. Daniel raised the shard high, his arm trembling, his voice carried across the arena. I did not fight with strength alone. I fought with will, with thought, with the same heart that made me jump into the sea. If that is not enough, then kill me now. The crowd gasped. His words burned through the silence, raw and unshaken. The king's eyes locked with his for the first time. The hard stone of his face cracked, not into a smile, but into something close to respect. Perhaps, the king said slowly, his voice heavy as thunder, this human is more than chance. The arena still echoed with silence. Smoke from the trial beasts curled into the sky. The runes on the ground faded until only faint light remained. The crowd watched in awe, their whispers a storm of disbelief. Daniel stood bleeding and exhausted, his hand still clutching the shard of crystal. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His body trembled, yet his eyes burned steady. He had faced death again, and once again he stood alive. The king rose from his throne high above the arena. His golden crown shimmered under the dawn light. His face was hard, but his voice carried a weight that shook every soul. The test is done, he declared. The human has survived, not by strength alone, but by wit and will. Such spirit cannot be ignored. The nobles erupted. Some shouted in protest, "He is not one of us." Others argued, "The sea spared him. The trial bowed to him. Perhaps he is chosen indeed." Their voices clashed until the king raised his hand. Silence fell once more. The princess leaned forward, her face pale, but her eyes shining. Her voice rang through the hall, soft yet unshakable. "Father, he saved me when none would. He faced the sea. He faced your trial. If he is not worthy, then who is?" The king's gaze lingered on his daughter, then shifted back to Daniel. Long silence stretched before his words came, heavy as stone. "Then let the human be rewarded." The hall gasped. The nobles turned furious, some pounding their staffs against the floor. But the king's word was law, and none could break it. Daniel felt the guards close in, but this time not with chains. Instead, they guided him from the arena, through shining corridors that pulsed with light. Doors opened before him, carved with symbols older than memory. He was led into a chamber vast and glowing, a room few had ever seen. The chamber of the core. At its center floated a sphere of pure energy, a living sun trapped in crystal. Its light bathed the room in colors no human eyes had ever known. It pulsed like a beating heart. Each thrum echoed deep into Daniel's chest. The princess entered behind him, supported by healers, her gaze locked onto the core. "This," she whispered, her voice trembling, "is the heart of avarice, the gift of our ancestors, the power that guides our world. No human has ever touched it. No alien outside the bloodline has ever been allowed near. But tonight, it chooses you." Daniel stepped closer, his body shaking. He felt the energy reaching out to him, like invisible hands brushing against his skin. The nobles who followed hissed in fear. "It is madness," they cried. "If he touches it, he will be destroyed." Another shouted, "This is sacred. He must not." But the princess silenced them with a single glance. Daniel's breath came heavy. He remembered the ocean, the trial beasts, the voices of the crowd. All of it had led him here. He reached out his hand, his fingers trembling. The moment he touched the core, the world changed. Light exploded, filling the chamber with fire and song. The air shook, The walls glowed, and the energy poured into him like a flood. His body lifted from the ground, his wounds closing, his pain vanishing, his mind filled with visions, stars burning, galaxies swirling, 1,000 voices whispering in harmony. He saw the ocean bowing, the trial beast dissolving, the stars themselves bending. The princess gasped, her eyes wide with wonder. The king's face, for the first time, broke from stone, showing shock. The nobles shielded their eyes, unable to watch. When the light faded, Daniel stood tall. His body glowed faintly, his eyes brighter than fire. He looked at his hands, trembling. What is this?" The princess stepped forward, her voice reverent. "It is the gift of the core. It does not give power without reason. It has chosen you." Daniel shook his head slowly. His heart thundered. "I am only human." The king's voice rumbled low. "Not anymore." The chamber whispered with fear and awe. The nobles stepped back. Some bowed. Others trembled. The princess's eyes glistened with pride, her lips curving in a faint smile. "You saved me once in the sea," she whispered softly to him. "But now, Daniel, you may have saved us all." And in that moment, Daniel understood. The reward was not gold, not jewels, not even the favor of royalty. It was something far greater, a bond with the very heart of a world not his own, a power beyond imagination. But power always comes with cost, and somewhere deep inside, Daniel felt it, a shadow waiting, a choice that would one day demand his soul. The chamber still glowed faintly with the light of the core. Daniel stood in its center, his chest rising slowly, his hands trembling as if they carried the weight of stars. The energy still pulsed within him, strange and alive. Each beat of his heart echoed with voices not his own. The princess watched him with wide eyes. Her lips trembled, not with fear but with awe. She had seen her people's greatest warriors bow before the core and be rejected. She had seen nobles crumble under its light. Yet here stood a human, lifted and remade. The nobles muttered in fear. "It is a mistake," one hissed. "The core cannot choose an outsider," another whispered. "If it has chosen him, then our world itself has changed." Their words tangled with dread. The king stepped forward, his golden crown burning bright. For the first time, his voice did not thunder with anger, but carried a heavy respect. "The core has spoken," he said. "It does not choose by blood or birth. It chooses by will, by spirit. Tonight, it has chosen a human, and we will honor that." The chamber filled with gasps. Some nobles bowed reluctantly, their pride swallowed by ancient law. Others turned away, their faces twisted with hatred, yet none could deny what they had seen. Daniel's breath came heavy. He looked at the king, then at the princess. "I do not understand," he whispered. "Why me? I am no prince, no warrior. I am just me." The princess stepped closer, her hand reaching for his. Her voice was soft but certain. "Because you are human, and that is what makes you different. You see what others ignore. You act when others freeze. You risk when others retreat. That is what the core saw. That is why it chose you." Her words sank deep into him. He remembered the night by the docks, the scream that split the air, the cold water pulling him down. He had not thought of destiny then. He had only thought of saving her. And now that simple act had changed everything. The king's gaze was sharp. "You have power now, but power is not reward. It is burden. It will demand of you more than you know. If you walk this path, you may never return to the life you had." Daniel looked down at his glowing hands. His chest ached with the truth of those words. He could feel the core inside him, vast and infinite, whispering of stars, of worlds beyond sight. It was both gift and curse. The princess stepped forward, closer still. "Whatever path awaits you, you will not walk it alone." Her words carried weight, her eyes steady on his, a promise made not as royalty, but as someone who had seen his heart. The chamber grew silent again, the nobles watching, the king waiting. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, then raised his head, his voice firm. "I did not ask for this. I did not seek reward. But if this is what fate has given, then I will not run. I will carry it. not for myself, but for all who need it." The king studied him, his face unreadable. Then slowly he nodded, "So be it." The princess smiled faintly, relief and pride in her eyes. The chamber pulsed once, the core dimming as if in agreement. But deep within Daniel's chest, he felt something else, a shadow hidden beneath the light, a warning whisper. He saw flashes, burning skies, shattered towers, oceans turning black, and a voice in the storm, neither human nor alien, whispering, "You are chosen, but not for what you think." Daniel opened his eyes, his breath steady. He looked at the princess, then at the king, and finally at the stars shining through the high windows of the chamber. His voice dropped to a whisper, almost to himself. "This is just the beginning." The princess tilted her head, hearing the words. Her heart stirred with both hope and fear. The king's face hardened, as if he too sensed the storm ahead. The nobles left in silence, the crowd outside waiting for answers. But none of them would forget this night, the night a human saved a princess, defied the sea, passed the trial, and touched the heart of avarice. And somewhere beyond the ocean, in the endless dark between stars, something stirred, watching, waiting, for the human who now carried the core within him was no longer a stranger. He was a threat, he was a promise, he was the spark of change. The story of Daniel, the human who saved the alien princess, was not an end. It was the first page of a tale that would echo across worlds, across galaxies, across time itself. And as the moons of avarice glowed above the palace, the human stood tall, his eyes burning with light not of this world, a man reborn, a man chosen, a man whose reward was beyond imagination.